Obviously, extremely disappointed with the outcome. It was a game that we felt like we had an opportunity to win. We were in it all the way until late. The score was close enough for us to capitalize on that. Just didn't make enough plays out there. There were plays to be made, and we didn't make them. Too many turnovers. Boston College did a nice job playing that style that they were playing, and it was good enough for them to win. So Coach Hafley, fantastic job, tip my hat. But I'm still proud of those guys in that locker room, our defense, offense, trying to battle. Carlos did a good job. I know there's a lot of interceptions, but, you know, when you're playing with your backup quarterback, the other guys have to find a way to win the game. And LeQuinn almost found a way to do it. The offensive line did a nice job in the rushing game. But once again, we lost too many guys in that game. In the second half, the lineup started changing. So, questions?
Start from Emily.
Dino, when did you know that Garrett was going to be unavailable for tonight's game?
Not until Thursday, I believe.
So he practiced most of the week?
He didn't practice at all.
He didn't practice at all. So he came out of the Virginia Tech game and was completely out for the whole week?
He didn't practice at all.
So Carlos was taking all of the number one snaps. Did you rotate like Davis in or anyone else?
Carlos took all the number one snaps.
So you felt that going into this game, he should have been prepared to play with the number one unit, or would you have liked him to have obviously more time?
Emily, please, I just came off the doggone field, okay? You asked your questions, I answered your questions, okay?
Henry.
Coach, what went into placing Jason back on the sidelines instead of up in a booth? Was that just a difference?
With Carlos being down, I thought it would be better for him to be down there. That was Jason's decision to come down with Carlos.
Do you think it made a difference at all in some aspects of the game, or?
You would have to probably ask Carlos.
We'll go all the way and back to Mario, and then back up front to Chris.
Did you see a change in your offense tonight? Were you pleased at times with the way you were able to move the football?
I thought there were some things that we did well. Obviously, you know, Carlos has some different things that we can capitalize on. There were some deeper balls being thrown. There were some things out there on the perimeter that was exciting, but just too many turnovers to capitalize to really have an opportunity to win the game.
Chris.
Dino, do you expect Garrett back during the regular season?
We don't know.
What went into the decision to go with Jaden over Elijah Clark at safety?
Elijah Clark was suspended because of something happened within team rules. His suspension was half, which meant that he wasn't allowed to play defense, but he was allowed to play special teams. Team rules.
Team rules.
We'll go in the second row to Michael. Chris, can you just pass that back for me?
Coach, near the end of the game, in the second to last offensive drive, it looked like Carlos was maybe hurt. What went into the decision to bring him back out for that final drive?
Carlos felt that he could go. We were ready to go with our backup quarterback at that time, and Carlos said he could go, and we gave him the opportunity to go. The trainers had to okay it. Carlos had to okay it. If either one of them didn't want to go, we went to the next quarterback, and we'll do the exact same thing next week if he can't go.
So going into next week, you feel that Carlos, at least at the moment, would be, if Garrett can't play, he would still be the one to be quarterback?
I hope so.
You just pass it right to your left there.
Coach, what went through the decision-making at the end of the first half to run the ball and then kick the 57-yard field goal?
Well, what do you mean to run the ball?
Just when you had 15 seconds left and a couple timeouts.
They thought they had a good run. We called a run earlier, and I don't know, it went for a long touchdown. They should have been thinking that we were going to throw, so we called a run.
We'll come right over here to Wyatt. Pass that down, thank you.
Coach, Carlos only completed one pass beyond the line of scrimmage tonight. Was it in the game plan for him to work primarily with screens, and what are your thoughts on him only completing one beyond the line?
That's part of the game. We threw other passes past the line of scrimmage that he didn't complete. So I don't think you should say that we were only throwing passes behind the line of scrimmage.
We'll go to Dan in the front row.
Do you know this team's been through adversity before, started 4-0, 5-game losing streak. what's your message right now and just what you can say about how you move forward knowing that the team's been through adversity?
We're going to circle the wagons. We'll circle the wagons. We'll play within ourselves. We'll keep the family close. This team can still accomplish some of the goals that we had when this season all started. And it's going to take everyone in the room to work together and to play unselfishly.
We'll go all the way and back to Mario again, please.
Along this stretch and along this time, what have you learned about yourself that you kind of have to convey to this football team?
I think the biggest thing is that we're a family, and we hear the noises outside, but we're not gonna let that affect us. You watch that game, and that was a game that we were in to the very end. And they're disappointed. I'm disappointed. A little frustration, but the bottom line is there's also growth. Okay, and those young men are growing, and they're learning that everything doesn't happen always the way they want it, and they got to fight, and they got to claw, and they got to scratch. And winning is difficult. But if you keep pressing and you keep working, you know, you have an opportunity to reach your goals. And that's what we're going to go back to this week and do. Let's go back and try to find a way to get 1-0 in our next game in Yankee Stadium.
All the way in the back row, Citrus.
Coach, a few dropped interceptions throughout the game, particularly in the first quarter. Is that something you guys want to focus on in practice going forward?
We work with those guys a lot. I thought some of those catches were, I wouldn't say easy catches, but they were catchable. And it was disappointing that we didn't come up with one. I can visualize, I think, 3 of them. You know, it was unfortunate that we scooped up the fumble and then we couldn't score. That was unfortunate. And, you know, and then obviously, you know, we had a play where we got a receiver deep and caught a ball, and then all of a sudden the ball was in the other guy's hands. So definitely had some mishaps, but we're going to grow from them.
We'll go in the front row for the next 2, go to Emily, then Chris.
Do you know, last week, Dan Villari had shared with us that following the Virginia Tech loss, one of the first things you came in and said was that you would place the loss on yourself. What was the message coming out of this game? Do you again place this loss on yourself, or kind of what's the message at this point?
My messages are from my team inside, and you can get those messages from my players, and it doesn't bother me one iota. But I did give them a message after the game, and you can ask them the message.
Chris?
Oh, the late hit they called on, or the
Say it again.
the late hit on Anwar. What was your perspective on that one?
It's a very difficult situation for a person to be in. I felt like the young man was coming at his knees, and he kind of jumped up so he didn't hit his knees. And I thought he turned his back so he didn't get his helmet or his shoulder in there. And then they called him for roughing the quarterback, who runs a lot. So, but he had started his slide. When they start their slide, he's protected. Sometimes I think there's got to be some wiggle room of where he's sliding, who he's sliding into. But that's okay.
Penalties have been an issue. Elijah had the team rules thing. Are you worried at all about any lack of discipline, lack of focus from the team?
Lack of discipline? No.
Go to Brett and then
Can I ask why not?
What?
Like, what makes you confident that that's not an issue?
What makes you want to ask that question? What was the lack of discipline? You talking about the penalties?
Well,
You mean when they were simulating the snap count and getting us to jump? Okay, that's happened. It's happened all year. So
okay. I can't hear it where I am.
Do you know what, at this point, would be your message to a frustrated fan base on why they should still believe in what you're doing here?
You know, the definition of faith is belief in things unseen if you want to go biblical. We normally don't do that. What we normally do is believe without evidence. Okay. I believe in this football team. I would be very careful if you try to not believe in them because they have a tendency to get things done. And I still believe they're going to be able to get things done this year.
You've fallen to a point where you have one of the worst records in ACC play. Why the struggles in league play from your view?
I think you've seen it. You know who we've got out there. You've seen our issues with who's on the field and who's not on the field. But we're not going to use those as excuses. We're going to line up and we're going to play every week. And we're going to do everything we can, not only to make our family proud, but to make the community and the university proud as well.
And last question for Coach to the front row.
Coach, Boston College had Boston College dominated time of possession in this game, and for a team that hasn't really scored over 14 points in about a month, how do you, as an offense, kind of create longer, more sustainable drives that result in points?
It's not the key. The key is scoring points. So they had all the ball all that time, and they outscored us by 7 points. And you could see that by the turnovers that we had and the opportunities that we had an opportunity to get to 7 points, to get to 8 points, or to have more than those points. So the time of possession is nice. And while that clock is ticking, they're not running plays. Okay, it's just a different style of football, same style of football that Army plays. The key is, okay, is trying to outscore the other opponent, which we didn't have an opportunity to do. We weren't able to do today, which is disappointing.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.